That's a grand title, isn't it? How to be an AI manager. We'll see if I can live up to that. So, first things first. Our friend from before, each part of that presentation I completely agree with, as it kind of looks like what me and my Honda propeller head friends in New York have been spending the last 4 years trying to kind of work out. So I'm going to do a few things. I'm going to tell you a couple of items that you know already. Then I'm going to tell you a story about what we've built as an example. And then I'm going to try to suggest what the future might look like, the near-term future, for where we might just all become managers of some sort. And once I've done that, you can then immediately call bullshit and say, Dennis, you're full of crap. That doesn't make any sense. Or you can kind of say, hey, that's a version that could play out. Let me go do some additional research. So that's at least my hope. And I've got 20 minutes. That's what they allotted me. And 1 Red Bull. So here we go. I think the romantic promise of AI is one certainly for where we can take a set of chores that we were somehow forced to do and then at some point stop doing those particular chores and let the machine do it. That's the kind of positive connotation which we can apply to AI, right? Then there's all the negative ones that you'll read about in the press as well, for where things I love, the job that I've done for the last 10 years will disappear. I'm probably going to be unemployed together with another 30 million people in the US, and it's going to be super fucking sad. That's not the version of the future that I certainly live in. So have that bias applied to anything which I say from here on forward. Now, I am of the kind of viewpoint that many of the things that we do today, and sadly I'm getting older at 46, so I certainly have some memory of taking my CS degree on the command line and some memory of us, if anything, over the last 2 or 3 decades have turned into mini machines ourselves. As in, software were supposed to kind of help us be, if anything, even more human, but somehow we ended up becoming even more like machines. And there's not anybody in here who should tell me that they really like to sit some sad Thursday afternoon taking pictures of their receipts so they can get reimbursed by their company. No, you don't. You fucking hate it. Or some meeting which you need to kind of set up for where somebody emails you and say, can we meet Wednesday? You say Thursday, they say 1, you say 2. That's not the fun part. Meeting up with them is the fun part. Planning a trip from New York to Moscow to Tallinn and back and what have you over 3 days. Being here is the fun part. Planning the trip, not so much. So I think we do plenty of little machine tasks that humans weren't even supposed to do to begin with, but somehow the constraints of the existing software didn't allow us to escape that. So I certainly believe, if anything, that kind of first phase of AI will kind of almost liberate us to finally do what we were supposed to do. And again, I know I'm slightly biased here. Now, when I say businesses have been somewhat reluctant up until this point, I think a good little test you can do, or we can all do, right? As in, right now, what is this? This is Saturday, perhaps not Saturday, then Monday, right? On Monday, go into your inbox, look at that 80-some odd emails that you have, which is now unread. Then go look at that job description of yours for when you got hired, right? We all had some sort of job posting that we looked at and said, that looks interesting. I'll take that job. I'll be the sales manager, the product manager, the senior engineer, the data scientist, the this or the that. But in that job description, you had 7 bullets for where, if you are my account executive or SDR or UX designer. I want you to do these 7 things. As in, this is what I'm hiring for. This is what we're interviewing for. This is what we're testing for when you come in. This is how we're going to score you when we have to kind of figure out who we're going to hire. Now, take those 7 bullets. Look at those 80 bloody emails. See how many of those emails you can match up to those 7 bullets. You know what? In a best case scenario, each one of the emails in your inbox, and email is just one communication channel. You can pick Slack or your messages or whatever, but let's just stick to email for the fun of it. If those 80 messages doesn't pair to the 7 things that you were hired to do, I think you're doing a pool of machine tasks. I actually think you're doing stuff that you weren't hired to do, but somehow you can't escape it because it comes along with you being able to do your real job. And that means, let's take a sales function. Don't tell me any salesperson loves to do input into Salesforce. Don't tell me that any senior designer likes to kind of sit and crop 140 images for some new version of some set of landing pages. I think that's not fun. Now, that's what you know already, and I'm sure we agree on that without much debate. Now, let me tell you about what we built and how I think the implication, not just of what we've done, but what we've done and what 1,000 people just like me will do in the not too distant future. So what we kind of put in place here is an intelligent agent. You can call it chatbot. It just sounds like those 4 years were too much to kind of build a chatbot. So we like the idea of an agent here. So we built an agent that can schedule meetings. And that sounds kind of very easy to understand, right? But it's one of those things for where it's also very easy to understand a self-driving car. Hell, my mom kind of gets the idea of a self-driving car, but delivering on it, as in getting that actual car on the streets of Manhattan without hitting a pedestrian in the first 100 meters, that is near impossible. As in, we actually don't even know yet whether we're going to be able to deliver on it in the next kind of decade or in the next many decades or in 2 years. Now, this is of not as dramatic complexity, but of similar complexity. So this particular agent is one for where you email me saying, hey, Dennis, I'm going to be in Manhattan in December. Do you got time to meet up for a Diet Coke? As in, we all have that email in our inbox right now from a colleague, from a friend, from a vendor, from a customer, some idea of, I want you, me, or more people to kind of get together. Now, the only way you could escape this chore was if you somehow stayed with the organization for 20 years, became SVP of Flim Flam, and got your own human assistant. As in, that was the only way you could escape this particular chore, so that you could say, hey, you know what? I'd love to meet up. I have CC'd in Tom. He can help put something on my calendar once you're here, because I don't know when you're going to be here. I don't want to tell you where my office is at. I don't know when I'm free. Tom can just figure it out with you. Now, that seems a little bit odd that it's a chore, but it's a chore for where we only want people to be able to escape it if they reach some sort of certain level. Some people will use some sort of pay threshold for where if I pay somebody a certain amount of money, then we can afford to kind of give them an assistant. I don't think that's how we should think about it. We should think about this as a piece of software and as a non-luxury, so that anybody can have their own assistant, so that I can just reply back and say, yeah, I'd love to meet up. I've CC'd in Amy. She can help put something on my schedule once you're here at the office for half an hour. Now, Amy or Andrew, in this scenario, is a machine. And this is where I certainly like the idea of moving from chatbot to agent. It's a machine who understands first of all, understands that, do I work for Dennis? If I work for Dennis, what did he just ask me to do? If I understand what he asked me to do, let me remove Dennis. Let me then reach out to one or more participants. Let me have kind of very human-like really negotiations with all of the parties. Let me make sure I can drive that conversation forward, understand once it's concluded, and upon conclusion, send out an invite. And again, you know exactly how to do this. You've all done it in here. We all done the little kind of email ping pong or the little kind of text back and forth. It's not hard. It's just a chore, and we should escape it. So the agent here is one that kind of removes that, and that would have us be, if I was going to paint some sort of a market map, kind of be a verticalized AI, if you will. So you can think of the Alexas and Cortanas and Siris and Google Home and so on and so forth as kind of a horizontal AI, for where you can ask it any question and it'll have some sort of answer, or request it to take any action and it might be able to do that action, as in, what's the time in Singapore? Or set my alarm clock for tomorrow morning, 6:20 a.m. Kind of question, answer, request, action. We've moved into this territory as kind of a verticalized AI, for we only do one thing, but that one thing really, really well, but we can do multiple steps and allow it to have full autonomy, meaning that once you ask Amy to do something, I am excluded from the dialogue and she will continue on her own. Kind of like a car, right? For where I can't, on every turn, kind of tell it what to do. I told you to go to Midtown, so just get me there. And this is the same. Just set up a meeting between you and I in December when you're here. So I've told you what to do, so you do you. And that is certainly where it becomes rather complex very quickly. And I think the complexity, if I'm really honest, if I'm just going to boil this down to one thing, why is it so damn hard? Why did we need 100 people over 4 years to kind of do something seemingly easy, as in next Wednesday at 12? How much AI do you need to kind of figure that out? The biggest challenge really is that it's somewhat simple to get two machines to talk to each other. It is somewhat doable to get two humans to talk to each other. It is nearly impossible to get a machine and a human to talk to each other. And first of all, as I'm sure we all agree on, or all know really here, is that language is just not a solved science, and the only way you can really have any hopes of making any progress here is that you can carve out some corner of that universe and potentially be able to kind of navigate your own little corner. So if you think about what we've kind of engineered, it's really three parts, right? There's the part for where you need some natural language understanding or some idea of what is either being asked right now or what is being talked about. Not some parts of it, but in full. As in, there's plenty of places where partial understanding gives you some value, but you can't have, just going to put this in context, you can't have a car that understands the environment, but now I don't know whether that plastic bag is a baby or a plastic bag. That's no good. You gotta fucking know that. And if you don't, you gotta stop the car. And again, we need to know exactly what's being talked about here, so we cannot not know. So that certainly adds some complexity. But if we do know what's being talked about, say you email Amy, hey, I'm running 5 minutes late. That's fair. Happens all the time. But let's say you understand it, then you need some sort of reasoning engine for where, hey, if somebody's running 5 minutes late, what do you do? As in, how do you navigate this meeting negotiation universe? What is my action? And it's perhaps simple to figure that one out, but what if it's 10 minutes? What if it's 15 minutes? What if I have a meeting afterwards? What if I don't have a meeting, but I'd rather have it rescheduled? So there's all sorts of kind of complexities in the actual reasoning. And then if you actually do have a reasoning engine that knows what action to take, that's obviously some sort of computational outcome. You need to be able to turn that back into language so humans can understand. So you need some sort of natural language generation engine. And that, by the way, is super interesting. As in, if you and me do an app over the weekend, right? We both have some idea of best practices. what should it look like? How should it work? We spent the last kind of decade kind of figuring that out. How do you design intelligent agents? What is a good design? And that is not immediately agreed upon. And we've done a ton of testing here. I made a ton of mistakes. But doing that design has been very, very exciting. And it's very interesting, the people which we hired to do so. We actually initially hired theater majors to be able to kind of craft the agent, because we want the agent to be not a bag of templates or bag of responses, but kind of a persona for where you have a feeling of having conversed with the same agent on Monday and on Friday. So that's been the complexity. And then, of course, that's just human ambiguity all around, right? This is the geek in me, but I'll give you one example of it. So perhaps this is very American. I'm not even American, but I spent the last 10 years there. So somebody will cancel a meeting, and humans are just too polite to say, Dennis, we're not meeting up. Okay, that's fine, but that's not how people talk, right? They'll say things like, hey, Dennis, I can't make it today. It would have been awesome. We should really get coffee one day. You all know what that means, right? I'm not getting any coffee with anybody anytime soon, because it's just a polite thing to do. But the machine will now read, we should really get coffee one day. How does the machine now know that you asked it to set up a coffee meeting at a later point in the future, but you really didn't? Here's another one. At 1 a.m., you send Amy a request saying, hey, Amy, can you get me and John together first thing tomorrow morning? Seems normal, right? Not really, because when you say tomorrow morning at 1 a.m., you mean in 7 hours, but tomorrow already started. You mean today morning. So now I'm in this setting for where I need to both understand what you said, but be confident enough to say, I'm not going to do what you said, I'm going to do something else because I think that's what you want me to do. Now, that's tricky territory to be in. It's kind of like if you went into Photoshop and wanted to crop an image, and you cropped it at 400 by 400 pixels, and I looked at it and said, you know what? I don't like that. I'll do 380 by 380. What the fuck? No, I cropped the image. You do what I tell you to do. This is a slightly different territory. Now, imagine not just us. So we're this intelligent agent that schedules meetings, but you can imagine this almost like the App Store, some sort of explosion, right? For where there'll be tens of thousands of intelligent agents that are hyper-specialized in being able to do one thing. Now, when that happens, and this is really just all lead up to the one thing I wanted to kind of tell you. Dramatic pause. The one thing I want to tell you is, now, imagine that there is this new software paradigm that's about to happen, right? For where the next 100,000 applications are not going to be 100,000 applications in the App Store. Many of them will be agents. When they're agents, and you're a new employee, and you hire Amy to schedule your meetings, Tom to kind of do your travel, Suzanne to do your receipts, and so on and so forth. Haven't you really just hired a team? As in, didn't you immediately, as a 22-year-old right out of college, hire 7 people? They just happened to be machines. But you had to both find them, as in recruit them, train them, as in onboard them, make sure they do what you told them to do. If they don't do what you tell them to do, fire them, find new ones. And that turns you kind of into a manager. As in, that was a skill set that you would usually learn once you kind of ended up in some job function over many years. But now, perhaps 2 days out of school, you need to know how to be a manager of 11 some odd agents that happens to be machines, but still a manager. That I find super interesting. Or certainly something that I'm trying to kind of mull over. What does that even mean? And what should people kind of be trained to do? And that leaves me right on the dot, 20 seconds. Thank you very much.